We've looked at those things. Now let's go one more. We seem to see attributes of design in biology, not just the information. You see things in biological structures that speak of design. I had a case one time, it was just on Dateline about 2 months ago. 1979 case, a woman was murdered in this house. In the back room, that was an addition to the garage. She lived there. One night, she was murdered while she was in her bedroom. And when we got there, we rolled the body over, and under her body, the killer had left something behind. He had left behind the garrote he had used to try to kill her. Eventually, he had to stab her to death because the garrote didn't work. But I can tell you that the minute they saw the garrote, the officers said, we should probably collect this because this looks like a designed object. Because this could be explained by some accident or some piece that came off the tree next to her bed or some piece that came off the bed itself. But no, there's something about this that shows something we recognize. It's an artifact. It appears to be a designed weapon. And that means you've got to have an artisan and a designer who would actually be responsible for such a thing. So what is it about the garrote that they recognized immediately that it was designed? Philosophers and thinkers have been thinking about this for a long time. There are some good ones out there. I take a slightly different approach. It's a cumulative approach. Remember, the more pieces that point to the same inference, the more reasonable the inference. So when it comes to this garrote that was used to kill this woman, I think I see 8 things. 8 things that I recognize as attributes of design. After spending 8 years as a designer before I became a police officer, I recognize these things in design. I'm not gonna, again, because I love you guys, I'm not gonna make you go through all 8 of these. But things I'm talking about are really, can just chance alone describe it? No. Can natural law get you there? No. There seems to be a certain goal direction, something in mind. When he put those handles on the end, you knew what he was gonna do. He's gonna pull tight, doesn't wanna cut his fingers. So even the handles alone give you a certain idea of his goal direction, right? And there's certain information. Actually, when I went to the search warrant at his house, he was thinking of 2 ways to kill her, both of which were silent. One was a garrote, one was a crossbow. Crossbows don't make any noise. So he still had the plans in his house for the crossbow. So interestingly, he was just being driven by plans. There's a certain amount of sophistication, an irreducible complexity. What is that? Well, that's when you have to have many pieces in place at the same time before it'll work. If you've got something that one piece, a rope by itself, you might say, well, if it's only a rope, heck, that could be left over from who knows what. But there's 3 pieces here. This does not work until all 3 pieces are in place. It's irreducibly complex to 3. The more pieces are required, the more sure mousetraps are irreducibly complex to 6 pieces. That's why we know they're designed. When you start seeing these things, they all point to the cumulative case for design. Those officers knew that was a designed weapon because those 8 attributes are there. As a matter of fact, if a detective would have come along later and said, don't collect that, that's nothing. That's not designed, that's nothing. Really? The officers still would have collected it. You know why? Because if you're gonna tell me that something that is so obviously designed is not designed, that it got there some other way, well, that burden's on you, not on me. I see the attributes of design, I'm collecting it. Don't think the only burden is on us, folks. If I can explain this through some natural process, that burden is on you. I could take this template and apply it to other things. Here's a bougainvillea tree in front of my house, right? In that tree, I often find what? Nests. Do I think this just happened because the wind blew it together? Does it grow in the tree that way? Or is it the product of intelligent design? Birds who intelligent, look at how, this is actually very, very beautiful. It's got the thicker things on the outside. It's nice and soft, fine on the inside. You can almost tell what it's for just based on its design. And it resembles other designed objects like bowls we already know. Now you might say, well, I don't see a certain informational dependency. I don't need DNA to get that. And I don't see a certain, fine. You don't need all 8 things to know it's designed. The more you have, the better the case. But it turns out you only have 5 attributes of design here, and you know that's not just from the wind. That's a designed object. And you got there with just 5 of the 8 attributes. Why do I tell you all this? Because let's take a look. And you can take out those 3, you still have a good case. That's a good case for design. I'm introducing this to you because Michael Behe, who's become a friend, he actually read my chapter on this issue so I could make sure I wasn't writing any checks I couldn't cash. He was great. And he actually saw something years ago that he identified as become kind of the icon of the intelligent design movement. He wrote a book called Darwin's Black Box. What he discovered in bacterial organisms is a little motor that drives the bacteria. The motor is called a flagellum. And it looks like this. In the wall of the bacteria is a motor made of 40 proteins assembled in a very specific formula, very specific pattern, which builds out this whipping tail that can stop on a dime, turn directions, and bend any way it wants. And this whipping tail is what drives bacteria. The question is, how in the world does that 40-piece protein machine ever get like that? This is a motor, a rotary motor we didn't even discover until 1978. By that time, we were making rotary engines for years. It looks just like our rotary motors. Yet we're going to ask the question, can I get this through by staying inside the room? Through some natural process of law? Or do I have to go outside the room to get this? I think we see the same 8 things. I do a whole presentation where I just talk about what these 8 things, I'm not going to do that to you. But the point is, we have at least 6 of these things. Even if you're going to say, I don't see 2 of them, fine. I think I actually are there. This is enough for me to infer design about that motor. It's kind of like this. If I was to take you out in the woods and I said, wow, we discovered this stand and a motor on it, would you say, look what the wind blows. This is a great, look what grows in these woods. No, you would know immediately this is not part of that environment because you recognize, again, that it's not natural. It's a product of design. Why? Because there are a number of attributes which you assign to this. It turns out biology is filled with molecular machines just like this. And this is why the famous atheist Richard Dawkins says it this way. He says that really biology is the study of complicated things that give the appearance of having been designed for a purpose. So even he recognizes that this is stipulated. This is what you see. And Richard Dorrit says, these are both atheists. Here's what Robert Dorrit says it this way. The apparent fit between organisms seems to suggest some higher intelligence at work, some supervisory gardener bringing harmony and color to the garden. That's the problem. So how do I explain that motor naturally? By staying in the room? Some have suggested, well, maybe it evolved from a slightly less complicated thing called a type 3 secretion system. That type 3 secretion system does look a lot like the motor, doesn't it? It is dramatically different in function. It may look like the motor, but it has nothing similar to what it actually does, the motor does. Here's the other problem. This is a 30-piece designed object. It has all the attributes of design we see in this one. The question I have is, how did this one come about? If you think we got from 0 proteins to 30 to get this, can you please show me the pathway from 0 to 30? Because remember, in biology, if evolution is true, you got to have a 1 protein thingamajiggy that helps the organism, that survives and passes on, till then it becomes a 2 protein thingamajiggy, then a 3 protein thingamajiggy. You got to show me a pathway, a functional pathway from 0 proteins to 30 to get this. Then you got to show me from 30 to 40 to get this. Guess what? No one can find that. And there's no remnant in the biological systems of anything along the way. Now, evolutionary biologists are more inclined to say, you know what? I can't get this from this, but this may have de-evolved into this. Because they know how hard it is to go in the other direction. It's much easier to get broken Lego pieces than to shake the Lego machine, the Lego box, and get all the pieces to come together. It's easier to break them apart. So if you're going to stay in the room by offering some form of evolution, good luck with that. Knock yourself out. Of course, the problem is that we see the attributes of design. But what kind of force could actually design? Design requires choices to be made. You've got to go back outside the room. And this is why Michael Denton says it this way, that each constituent utilized by a cell for a particular biological role, each cog in the watch, turns out to be the only and at the same time the ideal candidate for its role, particularly suggestive of design. Moreover, there's simply no way that such prefabrication could be the result of natural selection. But if there is something that is capable of designing on the outside, that might explain it.